Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Inside the Helmet. Today's going to be a little solo episode here. Sorry, I've been having a little bit of a weird week. Couldn't really get around to making the show until here on a Saturday morning at 3:18 a.m. when I can't sleep. Anyway, as it is a Formula One race weekend, I thought I'd make this episode all about that. Obviously, our usual episodes, we have a segment branched off for to allow me to kind of give any updates, any news, any fun facts about Formula One, since that is something I'm so deeply interested in. But my dad, who normally is on the show as well, doesn't share that interest or have any knowledge to contribute. So it's not a very fruitful section most of the time. Because a lot of times, it's not a race weekend, and so there isn't much to talk about. And when there is something to talk about, it's just, okay, this is what happened in the most recent race. Anyway, for anyone who doesn't follow Formula One but is watching the show, hi. Hopefully, I can pique a new interest within your mind. Um, Formula One is going racing in Barcelona again at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, which has for the longest time been the host of the Spanish Grand Prix. However, it is this year now renamed to the Barcelona or Barcelona Catalunya Grand Prix because there's a new track in Madrid, also in Spain, of course, for anyone who doesn't know international geography. Anyway, the Madrid race is being named the Spanish Grand Prix this year. A bit of an odd choice, but regardless, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. And they've already gone and had the first two free practice sessions. The third one is actually in just over 2 hours. It'll be at 5:30 a.m. for me. Qualifying starts at 9 a.m. for me. And so I wanted to do something a little interesting. I wanted to make this kind of a two-part episode. I'm recording the first part of it right now, and then I'll stop the recording and then restart it later on after qualifying has happened later on this morning. And I'll come back and see if any predictions I'm about to make are going to come true. So, for anyone who obviously hasn't been watching the free practice sessions or keeping up with it, let me kind of tell you how they've gone so far. So I have it here now. Your top five from free practice one. Now, there were a lot of rookies and reserve drivers taking part in free practice one. It is a mandate that in order to kind of further push along the supposed next generation of Formula One drivers, every F1 team has a few like test and reserve drivers kind of waiting in the wings. They're basically backups if you want to kind of compare it to other sports terminology. And is mandated that throughout the season, a few times, every team has to let their test and reserve driver take part in one of these free practice sessions. So a lot of teams chose to let that happen in free practice one here in Barcelona. My hair's messing up here. Anyway, George Russell set the pace, followed by Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc rounding out the podium, then Max Verstappen in fourth, and then Leonardo Fornaroli, who took over Lando Norris's McLaren, set the fifth fastest time. Obviously, practice is not totally indicative of how the pace will look during the race or even in qualifying. Then in free practice two, everyone, all the normal drivers jump back in the car, those who had been replaced for the first session. Lando Norris set the pace in his McLaren, very closely followed by George Russell in second. Then Oscar Piastri, Lando's teammate, was only half a tenth behind. Then Charles Leclerc and Kimi Antonelli rounding out the top five with Max in sixth, only mentioning him because obviously he's my driver. So, anyway, another point of note is that F1 posted this little post right here on their Instagram, on their social medias, talking about how many upgrades every team is bringing to Barcelona. Obviously, Formula One teams are able to upgrade and improve their car over the course of the season, mostly reducing weight, finding ways to be slightly more aerodynamic, things like that. Also bringing in like extra backup parts in case a crash happens, something like that. They need to replace or revert to an older spec part in case the newer upgrade isn't working as intended. Anyway, Ferrari brought by far the most with 8 upgrades, then Cadillac and Red Bull brought 2, and then Haas, McLaren, Mercedes, Racing Bulls, and Williams brought 1 upgrade apiece, and then Alpine, Aston Martin, and Audi, the A's, didn't bring any upgrades. So, right off the bat, obviously Mercedes, who have been so dominant throughout the entire season so far, having won every single race, they seem to obviously be near the front of the field, but McLaren are really the ones that are standing out to me, who also share that Mercedes engine. Of course, last year McLaren were very strong around Barcelona, with I believe Oscar took the win there. Also, for Max Verstappen fans, we'll never hear the end about how Barcelona, the Spanish Grand Prix from last year, probably cost Max the title. So did a million other things. Shut up. Anyway, McLaren seemed to be the real pace setters here, with Lando having taken the fastest time in the second practice session. But really, what sticks out to me is the man who replaced Lando and took his car for free practice one going fifth. Obviously, it's only free practice one, but if you're a rookie or like a test driver, you don't get to actually get in the car as often as I'm sure you would like to. I mean, obviously, if you're in that sport, if you're in that world, you want to be the guy. You want to be Lando Norris. You want to be Lewis Hamilton, actually getting to drive the car every weekend and be in the races and all that. So, like, while all the other usual drivers are, doing the normal free practice things, kind of testing out different strategies and stint lengths. I think if you're one of these reserve drivers who doesn't get this opportunity very often, you're all guns blazing. Obviously, you listen to your team and do what they ask of you, but I think that you definitely shoot for, you know, a more full all out lap a little bit more than most other people would in a free practice one session. So, I do think that someone with, obviously not the experience of a full time F1 driver, being able to jump in the McLaren car and go fifth fastest is certainly a showing that that car is, very good around Barcelona. So honestly, I'm thinking, and this is where we're going to get over to the predictions. I'm thinking for qualifying anyway. I'm not going to predict for the race until after qualifying, obviously. So you'll see that in the second part of this video once I go record it after qualifying. Anyway, as far as qualifying goes, I'm going to predict the top 5. So in 5th place, I'm going to have Isaac Hadjar. As far as practice goes, Isaac was replaced by Ayumu Uwasa in free practice one. So he only has had one session so far and he's gone 10th. So with Max being 4th and 6th respectively in the 2 sessions so far, the Red Bull is showing some clear pace already. So I will predict Isaac Hadjar in 5th. In 4th place, I'm going to predict Oscar Piastri. As I mentioned, the McLaren has shown some early pace. So I do predict that they'll be fighting for pole position. I actually think it will be very close, honestly, between a lot of the top cars in Q3, maybe not all 10 of them. They're in there in the final shootout, but I'd say the top 6 or so will probably be within only a couple tenths of each other. I think it will be a tight spread, much closer to what we saw last year in 2025 when we very notably had the closest spread in terms of like car performance between like the fastest and the slowest that we've ever seen, with just how much the teams have developed their cars over the years of the regulations still being the same. So Oscar, I believe, will be in a very close fourth. Then third, I'm going to go Max Verstappen. Obviously, it's impossible to count out Max. I feel like in the last few years, he's really honed in on his qualifying and has turned what at one point was almost like one of his weakest points, if you can even say he has weak points. He's really honed in on that, especially in 2024 and double, especially in 25. So I really can never count out Max. That's not even just as a Max fan. Like I the dude's just inevitable. If I was a Max hater, I would just be shaking my head in awe like half the time at just like, holy cow. Just when excuse me, just when you think he's down and out of it, he's back, you know. In second place, I'm going. I'm going for Lando Norris. Obviously, as I've already mentioned again with Oscar, and again before that, talking about the free practice sessions, the McLaren, unfortunately, is looking very strong around Barcelona. So I believe Lando will be able to use that. And he has always been a star qualifier. That has always been one of his standout traits. He's very quick over one lap in particular. So I believe he could put it on the front row. But joining Lando Norris on the front row, I predict, will be George Russell. Kimi Antonelli very notably had a very rough European leg of the 2025 season. Obviously, this is an entirely different regulation of car, so it's impossible to tell how those comparisons will go when the cars are completely different. Everything's different. He's leading the championship. He's won 5 races in a row, all that. So very easily could Kimmy just come in, prove me wrong? Absolutely. Now, granted, I think Kimmy will qualify 6th. I don't think he's very far behind. I just think that something weird will happen and someone's got to fall. And admittedly, when I predicted Isaac Hadjar in 5th, I was like, wait a second. There's 4 top teams, which means 8 theoretical top drivers. Hold on a minute. I'm going to exclude some people that you kind of look at and go, well, wait a minute. Charles Leclerc could be up in the mix. Wait, Lewis Hamilton obviously exists. And then hold on, there's 2 Mercedes drivers who are theoretically in the best car, and 2 McLarens, and I've already predicted both Red Bulls. So you see my trouble with these predictions, but that's my official prediction for how qualifying will go. And this is where we will end part 1 of this episode of Inside the Helmet. Isaac Hadjar in 5th, Oscar Piastri in 4th, Max Verstappen in 3rd, Lando Norris in 2nd, and George Russell on pole position. I guess we'll throw a little honorable mention. Kimi Antonelli, 6th place. We can do top 6, sure. Why not? But we will come back here. For you guys, it'll only be a second until the second recording jumps in. But for me, I will not know if these predictions come true for about 6.5 hours. So we shall see. And well, ladies and gentlemen, for you all, it was only a matter of seconds, but for me, it has been almost 7 hours. But qualifying just wrapped up here. It's just past 10 in the morning, and we have our results. If you recall, my predictions were Kimi Antonelli in 6th, Isaac Hadjar in 5th, Oscar Piastri 4th, Max Verstappen 3rd, Lando Norris 2nd, and George Russell on pole position. Oddly enough, I predicted Ferrari to kind of have a stinker, and well, let's get into that. I was partially correct. Charles Leclerc did unfortunately throw his Ferrari into the wall. A bit of battery deployment at play, possibly giving him more deployment. That's what they were saying on the announcing team. Who knows? These cars are garbage. Either way, but he did make it through the Q3. Anyway, in 6th place, we did have Isaac Hadjar. So only one place off, and I got him in the top 6 correct. Then in 5th, Max Verstappen. 2 places off, again, was correct about him being in the mix. 4th place, Lando Norris. Again, 2 places off, and again, correct about him being in the mix. He was only a little over 3/10 off pole position. Then we have in 3rd place, Kimi Antonelli, who I predicted to be in 6th, so 3 places off there. 2nd place, though, Lewis Hamilton. He put in an absolutely monstrous lap there right at the very end to knock off Kimi and push Kimi back to the 2nd row of the grid for the first time in a Grand Prix qualifying this season. And then, of course, the only one that I actually got right, which is the one that I was the most upset about happening, George Russell on pole position. Yeah, whatever. Mercedes overpowered. People were talking about them not being as good anymore. Like, come on now. But with qualifying wrapped up, I guess we should look ahead to the race. I'll give a couple predictions. I'm just gonna predict the podium for the actual race. Who boy. I think it is Kimi Antonelli's turn to have his Mercedes engine go kaput. And so I have George Russell bouncing back, taking a lights to flag victory in his all-conquering Mercedes that he has. I predict that I predict Max Verstappen will rise to 2nd place. I think there will be some shenanigans during the race, maybe a well-timed safety car that benefits Max somehow, and he will get 2nd. And then 3rd, I believe in the McLaren's race pace. The Ferrari still concerns me. I don't know if I can trust its consistency. I think Lewis, there's a good chance he could drop to 4th or 5th. So Russell winning the race from Max in 2nd to Lando in 3rd. And that is my prediction. I guess we'll see in the next episode. This is going to be the end of this episode. I do thank you for tuning into Inside the Helmet. We'll be back in the next episode and we can see if I was right. Thanks for watching.